Thank you, ladies. Welcome again to our monthly Multifamily Women's Mastermind Zoom. This is a educational platform that we do every month. And we are so excited to have a rock star, incredible Miss Kathy Fettke as our guest for tonight. And she's gonna share with us the effects and future of single family homes and multifamily homes post COVID-19. And also she's gonna share with us probably some inspiring stories about her journey to multifamily because of us women. And she doesn't need an introduction, but let me just, for just the people that don't know her, let me just go ahead and give you a brief intro to about Miss Kathy. Kathy is the co-founder of the Real Estate Investor Network, RealWealth, and the host of both shows, the RealWealth Show and the Real Estate News for Investors podcast. As the best-selling author of Retire Rich with Rentals, she is a frequent guest speaker for major media outlets such as CNN, CNBC, Fox News, Bloomberg, NPR, CBS, Market Watch, and the Wall Street Journal. Very, very impressive, really. The Real Wealth Show caters to an audience of new and experienced real estate investors. The podcasts get about 8,000 to 10,000 downloads per episode, with over 5 million downloads to date. Founded in 2003, RealWealth is a 3-time Inc. 5,000 ranked company with over 50,000 members. Kathy will share her journey to this real estate investing space to our women's group, and we all hope to learn about her expertise, and she will be giving us her inspiring journey to real estate. Again, as I said, she will be talking to us about the future of single family residences and multifamily homes after the impact of COVID-19. We are so excited to have you, Miss Kathy Fettke. And ladies and gentlemen, ladies, this is Kathy. Kathy, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you.
Welcome to Multifamily Women's Mastermind Group. And we are so happy to have you here. And feel free to tell us more about you, that and because you have such I have very high regard of you. I admire you, and you're such a rock star. So I'm so happy that you're here and that
I really appreciate
your expertise and knowledge with us.
Oh, well, thank you. I started I guess it was 2003, before there was meetups and before there were podcasts, and when the only way that you could get information was usually little real estate investment clubs that brought in, these slick speakers with their business suits, and they get you all excited and then get you to buy their product that was $5,000 or $10,000. And oftentimes it was just enough information that you had to buy the next round of $5,000, $10,000 products. So anyway, it was not as easy then as it is today. And so I guess I had to learn the hard way a lot of the way. So I just want to say that, people are really lucky today to have access to information that was much more difficult to get back then. And I do like to think that I was part of the momentum in opening that information up, because I personally really was desperate to understand how other people could be, have passive income, because at the time, I had 2 young children, and I wasn't working in the news business anymore. I was raising the kids and kind of doing some side stuff. But my husband got diagnosed with melanoma, and they thought it had spread. And so I had to figure out really quickly how I could take over the finances while he took care of himself. So he's better today. He's great today. But I just took my radio show that I had at the time and just started asking a million questions interviewing people and bringing them on the show and just trying to desperately find out what they were doing that I wasn't doing. And I was shocked to see that so many successful people were willing to share. So, and at the time, then that I would go to these real estate groups and I'd be like, wait, the person who's actually a millionaire that was on my show said the exact opposite of what the guy on the stage is saying. So I started to see that there was a lot of fraud and misinformation. So that's why we just kind of started, again, like one of the first meetups called RealWealth. And so today we are still helping investors with lots of education, and we have teams across the country, and we're growing, we're expanding actually now, bringing on new agents across the country because we think there will be a lot of opportunity coming. So for a lot of people who didn't go through the last downturn and maybe didn't have the chance to buy properties at pretty extreme discounts, you might get your chance. And you also might not. Like, we really just don't know where it's going, but we at RealWealth are preparing for the possibility that there will be opportunity in certain metros and in certain product types. So we're gearing up for it.
Great.
There.
Am I muted? In your prediction, do you think there will be opportunity? What would be the future of the real estate as far as maybe multifamily or single family? What would be the best asset type? I know you do both, but what would be the asset type that would be good for as far as opportunities are concerned?
Well, I mean, I'll show the slides why I think residential is going to be a winner. So that's why I'm still on the fence as to whether or not there will be the kind of bargains that we had in 2009. I'm not really sure. I think there will be some. By all means, it's a good time to understand how to acquire foreclosures and short sales. But I also know that the banks learned a lot, and they're not going to do that again. It was 2009 that, I mean, we were buying stuff for 10 cents on the dollar, but they figured it out, and they started to do loan modifications, just keeping people in their homes, not paying. Then they realized, oh, maybe we could be landlords. And then they started flipping, and, the bank started kind of jumping into things they hadn't done. I don't think they're in any hurry to go through that again. So that's why, we see some of the bailout money, a huge portion of the bailout money is going towards housing. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. So,
Yeah.
Kathy, if you want to start your...
Show my screen.
Yeah, and then maybe we could do the Q&A after.
Yeah, of course. So can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I did give this presentation on Monday, but I always change it up. But if you haven't been to our website, this is it. It's we're now realwealth.com. We actually had somebody bought the URL RealWealth. We had RealWealth Network, of course, and then they started pretending they were us. So we kind of had to sue them, and now we have RealWealth. RealWealth.com is our. It's also RealWealth Network. Either one will get you there. But these are the cities right now that we're focused on, and there's a lot of data and information on our website if you haven't been there to find out why we like these areas. And I'll go over kind of the metrics that we look for, that, I guess the foundational things that we look for in these cities. Most of them still have areas that are more affordable than other areas, but they also have a lot of job growth and infrastructure growth. And right now, I don't know if you saw the barrage of tweets from Trump today, but they were endless. And he's starting to spend money, starting to look at infrastructure spending. So we need to really pay attention where that money's going, because it will affect our industry. Whenever there's big money that goes into an area, that usually drives prices up. So as you said, I've been on a lot of, I was in the news, and then when I started to I kind of see that in 2006 that the market was about to crash, and we helped people sell at the peak and then buy in Texas. I ended up getting on Fox News, and I got this award with Goldman Sachs. I don't know, it kind of all blew up, and I've since been called a lot to help understand, to help the audiences of these outlets understand what's going on. For the past 12 to, about 12 years, it's been a confusing industry with none of really the fundamentals that people used to look at to understand what was coming. Those things don't matter as much anymore. So it's important to understand what to look for to know what to do next, right? We've got to be able to forecast. I just had this sort of mini argument with my husband yesterday because, he's like, I'm so sick of talking about it. And I'm like, well, you have to be able to forecast what's coming, even if we're sick of talking about it. Because certainly our investments depend on us knowing what's coming. And, the 50,000 members at RealWealth need to at least know what to look for in predicting how things are going to go. Especially since we're in new home development, that takes years. That's not like a 3-month flip. That's a 3 to 5 year projection. So we have to know what the market's going to be like in 3 to 5 years, even though you can't really know, but we need to at least have a pretty good idea. So this time, I mean, if anybody listened to my January predictions, which I do every year, and this January, I was really clear that some kind of black swan very likely could hit us at any moment. And what appears to be great could suddenly not be, just overnight. So I was right on that. I would never in a million years have thought it would be a sickness or, a pandemic. But I did think it would be something, because every time the economy hits a peak, something stops it and reverses it instantly. And it's never slow. There's never a slow letting out of air of the bubble. It's a pop. So this was the fastest by all means, but it was not unexpected. And that's what I mean. For the past 2 or 3 years, we knew that that some of the numbers just weren't making sense anymore, and that we'd kind of reached a peak in a lot of markets. And so we were already being extremely conservative. We have had very few acquisitions, because we predicted if something happened, well, that could eventually lower rents, which would then really affect people's business plans who had just acquired property thinking they could improve them and raise rents. So one cap rate difference is a big difference. Is a big difference in the value of the property. So, so anyway, when the market when the pin hit the bubble, basically in March, and everything just froze, and the job losses and everything, we weren't sure what to do. And that's why it's so shocking that here we are in July, April, May, June, July, just 4 months later. And these are the headlines that we're seeing: that existing home sales surged 21% in June. Wow. Amazing, right? And we're still in the middle of this pandemic. Weekly mortgage demand from home buyers jumps even higher, 19% annually. So people are applying for mortgages. Well, of course, because they're so low. June was a record-breaking month for some builders. Look at that. Not all builders, but in these cities, the darker blue are areas where, they've just had record-breaking sales. Wow. In the middle of a pandemic, when joblessness is at all-time highs. So this is not like anything we've ever seen before. It's not that surprising to me, but also at the same time surprising, because we follow job growth. That's the number one thing we follow, and we buy real estate where there's jobs. So when you've got this much joblessness, it's concerning, but at the same time, people are back up buying. You could see in new homes, Raleigh came in as the winner, and then Myrtle Beach, Cincinnati. Look at that. Who would have thought? New homes in Cincinnati, Indianapolis. So these are areas that you just, again, might not have thought would all of a sudden bounce back so quickly after, 3 months of people being absolutely frozen and staring at their phones all day long. So, right. So these are kind of surprising. Now, if you do listen to the RealWealth show, you might remember that I had Harry Dent on, and he actually totally predicted this. He said Q2 is going to be awful, And then Q3 is going to be a huge bounce back, like huge, make up for all the pent up demand. And he was right on this. So, but what we also didn't know was, oh my gosh, if all these people are going to lose their jobs, how are they going to pay their rent, especially multifamily properties? Because we do know that it was kind of the lower income jobs that were lost in travel and restaurants and entertainment and so forth. So these are most of the jobs that were lost, and these are generally people who rent. So boy, how is that going to affect the multifamily sector? Well, look at this rent payment tracker. Not that different from 2019 to 2020. Totally shocking. If you looked at this, you would not know there was a pandemic. When you look at these numbers and these collection rates for rent on multifamily. And in July, looking good. So again, if we, back in March, people were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It was terrifying. It was a terrifying time to own rental property. And that's what we do. We own 1 to 4 units mainly across the US. But, a lot of we also have had, we have a lot of members who buy apartments. And for us at RealWealth, we brought together all 15 property managers that we work with in different cities across the country. And we just masterminded how we were going to keep tenants happy. We gave incentives for prepayment. If you paid 3 months in advance or 2 months in advance, they got incentives. If they had lost their job, we kind of helped them find where they could get the stimulus checks and where they could get the PPP loans, and just really, really looking at how can we make these tenants so happy they'll want to stay. What we also didn't realize is that people didn't want to leave. They weren't in a big hurry to go be looking at another property and going through someone else's house, when those were the days when, I don't know about you, but like we were scrubbing our mail and any boxes that came outside, and I would change outside. I mean, this is when we didn't know if it could be passed through boxes, right? So people weren't exactly in a big hurry to go look at someone else's property, to go move. So people stayed put. And then when the stimulus checks came in, many people were actually making more money than they had when they were working. So rents got paid, and that is the good news. And again, builder confidence surging in June. It completely stopped. We have a huge development we're building in Tampa with like 4,200 lots there. And our whole business plan is to, it's like a crystal lagoon. It's so cool. It looks like the beach, but it's actually a lagoon inland. So there's no sharks, no alligators or anything. It's just this beautiful lagoon instead of a golf course. But the idea was that we would just sell bulk lots to builders. And we had like 13 million in contracts that just, bam, fell through in March. And every, builders are like, we're not building anything right now. And they just held steady. And then just this month they're back and they want those lots and they're building. So confidence is back up. And that's because US home sales have surged at the strongest rate in 13 years. Now, I know we're talking multifamily, but as I said on Monday, multifamily investors have got to understand what's happening in the housing market in general, because there's always that tug of war between, do you rent or do you buy? And when mortgage rates are this low, for a lot of people, it does maybe make more sense to own than to rent, but not everybody. Not everybody can qualify, and certainly not everybody has the down payment necessary. But we do need to pay attention to what's happening in the housing market for sure. So all of this good news and exciting news with housing, but at the same time, it's record unemployment. Look at this chart. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. Look at unemployment compared to, what we considered the worst recession, certainly in my lifetime. Look at the unemployment. And of course, a lot of us, myself for sure, I was thinking, oh, this is temporary. Again, I had Harry Dent on the show and lots of other economists, and they were really thinking it'll go away in the summer. That was, remember, what people were thinking. So a lot of people were thinking it would just be quick. And it would be a quick V shape. But then, of course, here we are, not so much. So we've got 17 million people on unemployment benefits. That's a lot of people. And many of these jobs won't be coming back. So what then? So here we are. But it's important to know that it's different in every single state. And that brings us back to, of course, location being a very important element to look at always with real estate. We know that some of the biggest job losses have been in Nevada, certainly Las Vegas, Hawaii, Washington, D.C., New York, and California. And the least would be Idaho, South Dakota, Utah, which makes me really happy. We have a development in Park City, Alabama, and Wyoming. So, some areas are really not as affected as others. So important to notice. So why are people buying? I mean, why are we collecting rents when we really didn't know if we would be? Why are people buying houses when we just thought that would just fall off a cliff? Okay, it's this. It really comes down to what I said earlier, is it's really hard to predict what's happening or where the economy is going based on old data, on data that we used to use as investors, which was oftentimes, days on market or affordability. I mean, that's still important. Today is, supply and demand is always important, but even if there's demand, but there's not money, then that demand, it just doesn't work. So today we do have demand for housing, but in March, there was concern there wouldn't be money. People wouldn't be able to borrow money to buy property because banks just froze up. Banks lend out way more than they actually have in reserves. They lend out 10 times or far more than what they actually have. So, if it's the run on the bank idea, like there's never enough money in the banks for the amount of depositors who think their money is in the bank. It's not, it's out and lent out 10 times what maybe the depositor put in. So that's why banks are scary. I'd much rather have my money in real estate than sitting in a bank where it's been lent out to 10 different people for the same amount. So what does the Fed do when banks freeze up and people were like running to the bank to get their money out? I don't know about you, but we did. We went and got a bunch of cash because we were freaking out, and that has the banks freezing. In addition to the idea that, wow, there was these foreclosure moratoriums and eviction moratoriums, and what was that going to do? And were people going to be able to pay their loans? And people weren't even having to pay their mortgages with the forbearances. So the Fed came in and announced unlimited purchases of mortgage-backed securities, that MBS and the treasuries. So what that means is the Fed just prints money, just creates it out of thin air and buys mortgage-backed securities. Because if there's not a buyer for these, there is no liquidity. There's got to be somebody who's going to buy the loan. And that's the Fed. So the Fed is buying these, and they're buying treasuries. And this time around, they didn't do this in the last recession. This time they're buying multifamily. They're buying commercial bonds so that they have more lending for multifamily because they really don't want to see those loans go bad. So here we just have, this says a lot about what the US government thinks about housing, that the majority of money, trillions of dollars, is going to keep the banks liquid enough to keep lending to homeowners and to multifamily owners and buyers. Oh, that's amazing, right? They could bail out any industry, but it's ours that they're focused on. And that's really because housing tends to be the foundation of our economy. There's so many jobs are created from it: construction jobs and furniture jobs and title companies and lenders and realtors, and just a huge industry. So unlimited dollars is going to keep our industry alive. That's pretty amazing. Again, commercial lending gets help. This did not happen last time. So that's why there's money. So that, the question is, well, great. If the government's just going to keep giving people checks, does that mean we're out of the woods until this thing is over? Well, the answer is we don't know. This is one of those times where I can just look you in the eye and say, I don't know where this is going. I mean, I could probably guess that it will change after November. I would probably guess this is very election related, but we don't know for sure. We do know the virus is real. We know lots of people who've had it. My daughter just had it and she's fine now. She was sick for 3 days, but she's fine, but she's young. But now I know a lot of friends and people in the real estate industry too, people we know who've had it, and it's been tough. I've got someone actually from the Huntsville area who's been down for 10 days and getting kind of scared. So we know the virus is real. We know it needs to get under control. We know that they're fast tracking these vaccines, but there's a lot of people that won't touch those vaccines. There's a lot of people that will, but it wouldn't be until later in the fall. It's kind of funny. Fauci said, we'll have it by November, which is like, oh yeah, of course, once the election's done, then we'll have it. I don't know. But what we do know is businesses cannot seem to open until this thing is figured out, because it is real and people are getting sick. As much as a lot of us would like to wish that it was just the flu, it's not. It's tough, really, really tough for some people. So with that, it's hard for businesses to know if they should open up. There's a lot of liability in that, right? And then there's some that just can't. They're just not allowed to. But certain areas are more open than others. And this shows you Cincinnati, once again, you see Cincinnati has just kind of been a sleepy town, right? But we've already seen it had some of the highest new home sales. And look at that, more businesses open and almost close to where it was. That's amazing. Jacksonville, second on the list. These are two cities that we're really active in at RealWealth, helping investors buy properties there, because we know those are good, solid areas. The Nashville, Austin, Indianapolis, Orlando, Tampa, they're close to being open. But we also have to remember that even if a business is open, it doesn't necessarily mean they were able to hire back all their employees, especially if like a restaurant can only be open at 50% capacity. I mean, it's pretty hard for them to survive even when they're open. So even though a lot of these areas are open and business is back, they're struggling still. So again, until this virus is figured out, we don't know. We don't know when things are going to open up. And of course, that leads us to spending being down. But look at it's kind of come back up, which is amazing. Spending just fell off a cliff in March. People saving their money. I mean, the savings rate is up at record highs right now, because in March, people were like, oh my gosh, I got to save money. I have no idea what's happening right now. And at the same time, there wasn't any place to spend it, right? I can't believe how much money RealWealth has saved with just me alone, not traveling as much as I normally do. I'm normally traveling every week, and I like to stay in nice places, and I like to take the best flights. And I mean, I had no idea how much I was spending on travel. It was a lot, and on dinners and treating people. So we just met with our CFO, and it's like, wow, oh my gosh, we are so profitable without me traveling. It's so much better. I'm going to stay home more. And the same with our entire team. Add all them onto it, and we've saved a tremendous amount of money. And that's how a lot of people have been. Like they've cut out things that they normally do, like getting your nails done or getting your hair done. I mean, we started saving money and stopped spending. And that's really hard on the economy, because our economy is based on 70%. 70% of our economy is based on us spending money. So when you see drops like this, of course, we're going to see a decline in GDP. But then as people started to feel a little bit better, like they could pop their faces out of the door and look outside, we started to see more spending. So that's coming back up, but it's going to be a while, and maybe never that we go back to our former lives. A lot of us have also found we can do things differently. And I don't really want to travel so much anymore. I mean, look, I'm here with you and we're all home safe and sound. And so there's a lot of things that we can do that we were all doing a lot of running around, before. And it's been a reset for a lot of people. So the spending may never come back the way it was. I mean, I look in my closet, I'm like, what do I have all these clothes for? All I wear is sweats. Of course, I have sweats on under this shirt. So, all right. So who are the winners and losers? We've got, for sure, everybody knows this is not a surprise, that non-store retailers, so online sales, doing great, of course. This is a great business to be in, online sales. My daughter started a little jewelry company last year just for fun. She would just make little necklaces for, for her friends. And then she put some on Etsy, and she's been getting all these sales lately because people are shopping online. That's just how it is. It's really cute. She's like, oh my gosh, I got 2 more sales today. So it's a great opportunity for people to figure out if they can get on online sales. I'll tell you, just even at RealWealth, we have never done this before, but we just started featuring a really cool property per day in a different city that's, got a tenant in it. And it's like a done for you rental property. And we just kind of post that special property for the day, and they sell within minutes. So even we're doing online sales now. We've never done that. So it's like a lot of businesses are changing. Building supplies, up, because all these people are at home, they're building stuff. I don't know about you, but we're doing all kinds of home improvement. I was never at home to why would I want to improve it? But now I am, and we're building stuff, and it's cool. Food and beverage stores, of course, we're eating at home more. So restaurants are suffering, but stores are doing really well. And sporting goods, general, and then you see way on the other side, clothing. Like I said, nobody really needs to look great anymore. It doesn't matter. I want to just be comfortable. Food service, God bless the restaurant owners who have just gotten hit so hard with COVID, and then the riots. And oh my goodness, I have close friends who own a restaurant in downtown LA, and just the day that they opened back up, the riots happened, and so she got hit very hard. Gasoline, we're not driving. My husband just bought a new car, and he's always trying to find some excuse to drive it because there's no reason. Anyway, so the states, again, affected, we already showed that. So the biggest issue that we have now is what's next, because I, for one, was getting really excited that, hey, maybe this hydroxychloroquine works. Maybe they figured this thing out. There's remedies. We found out ventilators aren't the solution. It's something else. So it's like, wow, maybe we're opening up again. Maybe things are going to get back to normal. And no. So I was hoping Florida and Houston and Texas, that never really shut down, that they would just skate through this thing and show the world that you didn't have to shut down. And well, that didn't work. So here we are. People have already received their stimulus check. They've already received their PPP funds. Now is when we need to be paying very close attention, because without another stimulus, I think there will be one. But it won't be as robust, probably. I think I heard instead of $600 a week extra, it's like $200 a week extra for unemployment. So there will be another stimulus check, but how long can that go on? So we're going to have to start paying attention to the 20 million renters who are at risk of eviction. And as those eviction moratoriums lift, and when maybe the handouts are gone, what's going to happen? So there are more and more reports coming out saying that mass evictions are looming, threatening 19 to 23 million renters. I really don't like being the bearer of negative news, because I've been like on a roll trying to lift people's spirits, saying, wow, look at this. Our industry is soaring. This is the industry to be in. When in fact, we do have to pay attention to the fact that there are going to be evictions, most likely, with people who don't get their jobs back, and those jobs don't come back ever. So this is a chart from CoStar, and it's actually not as negative as I just being, but this is rent growth. We saw massive rent growth. This is why so many people in multifamily were getting very, very, very rich. Look at that. So you could buy an apartment, you could fix it up a little, raise the rents. The rising tide is great. It's a great market to be in. So lots of people were buying and increasing value and selling for millions more and pocketing big bucks and doing it again. And then this happened. So what is expected is that the rest of the year, we very well could see rent decrease. And again, this is something that I said in my January forecast is don't buy anything with the underwriting assuming only rent growth, because that may not be the case. It may stabilize or it may go down because there's only so much people can afford. And in many places, it had already hit a ceiling. So what Marcus, CoStar is saying, we'll probably see rents decline for the rest of the year and then probably a rebound next year. So with bad news is always good news. I know for people trying to find deals, that's the good news, is that we have probably about a year, probably about 6 months from now is when could be an incredible buying opportunity, maybe even before that. And you get a little window there to do what I just said, which is to, buy a property with lower rents, improve it, and rents go up and you can do well. So wonderful time to really understand what to look for and to buy the right asset. And there will be opportunity anyway. There was going to be opportunity because people were doing some really crazy stuff in multifamily, just only buying and assuming that rents would go up when the rents had already gone up and they couldn't go up any further. So there are people who made really poor decisions and now they're like, uh-oh, rents are going to go down. They might be on bridge loans. They got to get out of those bridge loans and they may not be available. So there's going to be opportunity in the next 6 months. So it's a really good time to be in multifamily, in my opinion. Lease renewal now at the same time, we've had lease renewals hit 20-year highs. And by the way, these are slides from Neil Bawa. I want to make sure to credit him. I took a couple of slides from his presentation this week. I highly recommend you watch the full presentation, but these were just a couple of slides I borrowed. And so this was his, this is from Marcus Millichap, which is basically showing that people aren't really moving. They're staying. So, as landlords, we've got to really look at that and say, what can we do to keep our tenants staying put? Because when they move, it might be hard to refill that space over the next 6 months. So really good time to do like I said, we did. So we really worked with our tenants. We came up with payment plans. We gave prepayment incentives. If they would pay 2 months in advance, they'd get a discount. If they paid 3 or 4 months in advance, they'd get a bigger discount. You don't really want to maybe be doing that. That'll affect your rent roll. But at the same time, it's really nice to have tenants stay. Again, another thing you could do is help them really understand how to find a new job, like where's the job listings and where's what are the stimulus checks and so forth, so that they can make it through the next 6 months, which could be very difficult for a lot of people. Class A, again, according to CoStar, Class A multifamily is going to get hit the hardest. And I think we all could have seen that coming. There's some Class A multifamily that got way overbuilt. And today, when there's a lot of concern about being around other people and being in elevators with other people and being in sharing pools with other people and gyms, like all those wonderful amenities, the outdoor kitchen that everybody hangs out at, all those wonderful things now are not so wonderful. People don't really want to be around other people. So what was beautiful just 3 or 4 months ago, maybe not so much today. And so Class A multifamily may get hit the hardest. But, some of those little apartments that don't have elevators where you take the stairs and they're more open air and just more space around them, those could be really a great buy. Class C, according to Marcus Millichap, this is different than CoStar. They think the biggest risk is going to be in the Class C. So again, you got to just kind of pick your lane and really understand it. I remember some people saying to me, oh, Class C always does the best during a recession. I was like, no, it doesn't. Not always. Talk to people in the room who've been through it. There's people who had C-class buildings or they could not get their tenants to pay because it's the Class C tenants who get hit the hardest during recessions typically. So, they might be the ones who will be living there, but maybe not be paying. So again, it just depends. It is definitely the Class C that has lost their jobs for the most part. So, so here's his predictions that rent growth will be negative in 2020, but really, really boom back V-shaped in 2021. Demand for rental units to remain strong, and eviction moratorium expiration could facilitate massive temporary surge. So again, he's got a great presentation. Now, what we're seeing right now in single family housing is a V recovery. And that's really interesting. We don't know if that will continue, but when you really just look at supply and demand alone, there's been such short supply of affordable housing, just terrible, terrible short supply. And it's really hard for someone like me who's actually a builder. You can't build cheap. It's really hard to do, even in cheap places like Bozeman and Carson City and this little area out of Tampa. It's not that cheap. So, what is desperately needed is this affordable housing. But this slide kind of shows how, at least in single family, prices didn't really decline that much in past recessions, except for the worst one, which was the housing recession. That, of course, hit housing really hard in 2008. And that's why this middle one is the housing recession. And you could see, wow, yeah, housing got hit really hard. But in other recessions, in the best ones, barely affected. And in the worst ones, besides the housing recession, not that bad. So it's fairly typical that single family housing fares pretty well, even in recessions, and certainly rentals, because a lot more people are forced to rent. And that can apply to well-purchased and well-placed multifamily as well. Here's just a chart showing the lack of supply in single-family housing starts. I mean, it just dropped off a cliff after the last downturn and never really came back in any kind of strong way. So now with builders, a lot of builders not having the capital that they thought they would have, because even though there is still capital, it's really hard to get for commercial. For multifamily, it's a little bit easier, but for building, it's like really, really, really hard. So there's going to be even less new builds, which means in the business I'm in, which is the 1 to 4 units, it's going to be, again, what we've been doing is buying old properties, fixing them up and renting them as if they're new and keeping that price tag below $150,000. And they just rent. We have wait lists for these properties because they're so affordable. And that could be the same for multifamily. If you can make it really nice, but keep it affordable, there should be good demand. Again, this just kind of shows that out of the housing starts of the past, we're half of what it's been when you compare it to population. So inventory is way down and worse in some areas like Orlando, Las Vegas, San Antonio, Miami, Houston, Jacksonville. It just really low inventory, and that's driving demand both for rental and for homeowners. And this is partly because the population is growing. Population growth doesn't care about a recession, just keeps growing. And this recession might even create more population growth. And that's I know a lot of people have joked that we're going to have another baby boom after this, but it's probably true. People are together more, and they're either going to get a divorce or they're going to make babies, if they're in that age group. So either way, that's going to have a big effect on housing. If this last 3 months had people realize they don't really like each other very much and they divorce, that's 2 households now instead of 1. So that would even create more demand. And then if they end up having babies, well, they might need more space. And that's why we're seeing a big push for our houses, which are 3 or 4 bedrooms, because people are realizing, oh my gosh, my home is my everything now. It's my office. It's the kids' school. It's our recreation, our backyard, We might get another virus. Maybe this is the way things are ongoing. I don't know, but housing has really moved to the top of the list of priorities, and people want it to be a nice place because that's where they're going to be hanging out the most and having small barbecues, which they say spread the disease the fastest. But anyway, somehow people feel safer that way. All right. This is the demographics of the US, and we know that we have an aging population, but we also have a lot of young people. Look at that millennial boom. That's a lot of young people. And the youngest of the millennials are at home buying age, this big hump right here. They're at home buying age, and with interest rates so low and there's, starting families, there's great demand for more space. And then you've got these younger people who, a lot of them like living together. People ask me about student housing, and it's funny because little houses by colleges and universities are doing great because a lot of people don't want to live in the dorms for the same reason they maybe don't want to live in an apartment that has an elevator. They don't want to be too close to people, and they don't want roommates necessarily. But like my daughter, she came home and spent 2 months with us and was doing college from, her bedroom. And then she's like, wait, I've got a house in San Diego that we're renting. I'm going there. So all the kids went back to San Diego. They finished their studies together in that house. And, so student housing near universities could do pretty well right now. So this is just a chart kind of showing the age of people who've lost their jobs. They've been younger people and lower income people. So they might be people who can bunk up together or go back and live with mom and dad, but they're not necessarily home buyers. So, and lending is really cheap, but it's also really tough. If you see here, lending's got even tougher because there's not that much of it. It's really just being bought by the Fed. So they're being real picky. You can see it went down to even less credit available. So they're being real tough. You got to have really good credit, which again means that there are some more people who will be forced to rent, but they might want to rent something that has a little more space if they're going to be spending more time at home. This is just kind of showing that the government controls most of the mortgages, so they can kind of control the rules too. So that's why I really don't think that we're going to see a lot of foreclosures, because these are government-backed loans. They're just going to figure it out by pretending and extending, would be my guess. And we also know that we came into this with just an enormous amount of home equity. A lot of people bought a few years ago. They've seen home equity. They're not probably in a big hurry to just walk away from these homes. Here's the pre-COVID home ownership rate. It was already pretty low and ticking up, but I'm guessing it'll probably flatten. But what's interesting, in Q1 GDP, and that includes March, which was really when things fell off a cliff, you can see there was just negative everything except for residential. Look at that. Residential really drove the economy in Q1. So the big, I think, thing to pay attention to, and the reason why we just hired an asset manager and an acquisition manager for our syndications, is that we are going to be actively purchasing over the next 6 months, whereas I know a lot of people are want to kind of wait and see. But with all the money that's being printed, this $7 trillion being printed, that continues to devalue the dollar. Your dollar can buy less, which is basically inflation. And that usually drives asset values up. So we do believe, like I said, 60% of builders raised their prices last month. So the opposite seems to be happening. It's kind of a stagflation situation where we see inflation because of all this money printing, but joblessness. So it's like a bummer. You got people who aren't working, but prices are going up. So probably, most likely, we'll continue to see this gap between the haves and the have-nots. The people who can own assets that appreciate are they going to be the winners. And that's why it's important for you to be part of a group like this to help each other acquire assets, because that is really going to be the dividing piece between the the winners and the losers. Again, I hate to say it because not everyone has this information. I should say everyone can do it. Not everyone does. And they're going to really regret it. It's going to only get harder to acquire property in the future because of this. So the good news is that if you're waiting for a vaccine, there's over 130 in development worldwide, because you have the entire world fighting the same enemy with the most brilliant people on Zoom calls just like this. So, will they come up with one? I don't know. I still think the best thing you can do is take your vitamin D and vitamin C and be in the best shape you could be. But the world is really not going to open up probably till we get this vaccine, which probably won't be till the fall, and maybe not till the spring. All right. So I don't know if I answered questions or created more confusion, but if you want to go to our website, you can find out more about the different areas that we think are going to be, we will be active over the next 6 months. And we'll be adding some cities onto that list because I'm going to be paying really close attention to where the infrastructure dollars go. Because like I said, President Trump tweeted all day long about all this money he's giving to different states to start repairing the infrastructure. That's been something he's been wanting to do for a long time. And that will affect real estate in a positive way in those areas. Okay, questions. Should I get off of this? Oh.
Yeah.
Stop share. There we go. All right. So do you have questions? Are there, let's see, there's a little chat.
I think that they have questions. I think, I'm sorry, my internet just failed, but Melissa has a question. Are you taking a guess at how much GDP dropped for Q2?
Oh my gosh. I am not. It's going to be really interesting. But it could be worse next. A lot of us were thinking that Q3 would be the bounce back, but it seems like the bounce back was kind of in Q2. It might be worse in Q3. I mean, honestly, I have no idea. It won't be great.
Yeah. Actually, if you guys have any question, you just unmute yourself and go ahead. And I do not have my internet just got disconnected, so I'm using my phone right now. Candace, Michelle, if you guys can help me, Michelle Opel, Candace Pilgrim, if you guys can help me or unmute.
I mean,
yourself.
I can read these. There's questions here. Where are you finding properties? A lot of times I stumble on them, honestly. Like I talk to so many people. We have 50,000 people in our network, and I'm on shows like this all the time. And so I personally find them just from the network that we have. But there's a lot of people that can teach you how to find properties. And you're going to really want to know how to do that over the next 6 months. It's going to be an incredible opportunity. And when you do, and when you are able to find great properties, you can come to people like me and JV. If you're involved in a local REIA, there's always people with money. They're looking for somebody who's got the gumption. They just want to be the private money lender. So, if you're involved in your local REIA, you should be able to find someone who will fund your deals if you find them. So you just learn how to do it. It does help to be very active in your community and kind of put it out there. Whether it's through bandit signs or there's so many ways to find properties, having a network of really good brokers looking for you. What are my thoughts on syndications? Syndications are tricky. That I've had probably 7 attorneys. We've done 15 syndications at RealWealth. I've had many different attorneys. They are all different. All of our operating agreements are different. They are very complicated. There's no way the average person can even understand them. I barely can understand them. And what I found is that they're all different. And yet the operating agreement is actually the law of that project. So you have to understand it. So it's a sophisticated thing, and I wouldn't invest in anybody else's syndication unless you have an attorney just kind of review the documents and make sure that you're really well protected. And and then make sure that you have that the person that is managing the project, that there's more than one, because what if something happens to the one, it needs to be a team, and that they have an incredible track record, just an incredible track record in that very thing that they're doing. Because again, syndications are tricky. Too many people were jumping in and doing them that didn't know what they were doing. I've had difficulty on some of our syndications. On a multifamily, we were only able to return, it's like 70% of the investor capital. It didn't go as planned. So it's hard. And so if you're wanting to do it and be a syndicator, you need to have a track record yourself first. And if you're just really good at marketing, then you need to have a partner who's got an amazing track record. So that's my thoughts on syndication. On private money is a great thing to do, like lending it and borrowing it. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you find a great deal, I've had people pay us 12, 13, 14% to, for our money. And then we have done syndications where we earned 18%, lending the money because it was such a great deal. The manager still made a bunch of money, or the borrower. So yeah, private money for sure. And then you just got to be careful if you're doing hard money or private money that you have some kind of way to extend it if things don't go as planned, because you need to have a way out. So if you take a 3-month private money loan and you're like, oh, this house will be so easy to fix and flip, and then you don't have any buyers, or it takes longer to fix, and you got to pay the loan back, it's risky. So see if there's a way to negotiate extensions. We just went through that again. I told myself I would never do a short-term balloon note ever again, because you got to come up with the money when the note comes due. And so we just did a construction project, and the loan was due in November, and we did not get our replacement loan till end of January. So they were really sweet. But I mean, this lender could have taken our whole project. They were very sweet, but we had to pay an extra, more points and everything. So you need an exit plan doing private money or hard money. Do I think we'll see high inflation? I was asked this on Monday. If the Federal Reserve wasn't printing trillions of dollars, we would be in a terrible, terrible depression right now. A depression leads to job losses and foreclosures and all asset values just tanking and massive deflation. So because the Fed is printing money, we're not experiencing that. And especially in housing, they're putting most of their money, all this printed money, most of it's going into housing. That's part of the reason why it hasn't gone down in value. So it's being propped up. But otherwise it would be tanking. So for that reason, I don't think we'll see inflation. I think we'll just see less deflation. But at some point, there will be, at some point when jobs come back, it'll be crazy inflation. Yes. Let's see. Class C units are doing great, as many of them are essential workers. That's great. I kept hearing they'll get hit hard, but so far we're still full. I keep hearing that from a lot of people. So that's great. Wonderful. All right. And again, it just probably depends on the market that you're in, and you probably did a great purchase. All right. I think that's all the questions.
I think that's all the questions from everybody. Thank you so very much, Kathy. In behalf of my partners, Candace Pilgrim and Michelle Appelt, thank you so very much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing, for your generosity of your time and your expertise. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Kathy.